Hi, welcome back to the Blind LP of Eagle Eye Mysteries in London. We are now going to take on Case of the Revolutionary Riches with Jake. Let's begin. I missed it. I really missed this game. Jake, you and Starkazi may be America's answers to Sherlock Holmes. But do you think you could handle a mystery whose trail is 200 years old? Oh, that sounds like a challenge. That sounds like a challenge to us. That's pretty long ago, Uncle Basil. I doubt anyone who cares about it now. On the contrary, my dear Jake, there's a 2-century-old fortune in gold writing on the answer to this one. Pop by the Phaeton Club with me, and I'll explain the details. Okay. Okay, Uncle Basil. Let's go. Wow, maybe for once Uncle Basil wasn't kidding, Starkazi. That sure looks like a fortune in gold. Is it real gold though? Let's talk to Uncle Basil first. The letter in the box of gold that Marcus found is actually a 200-year-old... What is that? Tontine? Agreement. Can you imagine a tontine? Okay, don't take my word for it. You'll have to search it up. From the 1700s. What is a tontine? See, even Jake doesn't know. What is a tontine, Uncle Basil? I've never heard that word before. A tontine is an agreement that a group of people sign. I don't know, there's something strange about the way I pronounce it. I have no idea. It says a certain sum of money or a valuable item will be inherited by the last surviving member of the group. Okay. Wow. Who knows where the soldiers got the money, but somehow they decided only one of them should have it. Wow, that's not really fair. Perhaps they felt that they might all be killed in battle and the tontine was a kind of a prize to keep them going. But what if more than one survived? In any case, they all agreed to leave these shares of gold for whichever one of them survived the longest. Marcus has done quite a bit of research in the last week and he discovered all but three of the men were killed in the Revolutionary War at the Battle of Cowpens, North Carolina. The three men that survived the war were John Page, Thomas Blanche, and Samuel Mantlet. Marcus believes he's tracked down their descendants, and he's sent them looking for letters or records that would help us discover when each of the survivors died. That's kind of not fair. Mr. Blanche said that, well, what's the point of getting the gold? I guess for the descendants, said that he had to do some research in an old building on Queen Street. Miss Mantlet left a message that says she's found something over at Westminster Abbey. And Mr. Page just called from Madame Tussauds' Wax Museum. Alright. Would you and Starkazi help us out by catching up with each of them and seeing what they've found? Sure thing, Uncle Bess. We're on our way. Give me one moment, let me talk to him. Marvelous that you have come to our aid, Jake. I'm confident that you and Starkazi can be of great assistance in this investigation. Last week, the Phaeton Club voted to extend our wine cellar by knocking down one of our basement walls. When we demolished the brick wall, we found this chest. Oh man, it must be really old. The wine cellar. Apparently it was walled up on this site over 200 years ago by a regiment of King George III's men just before they went off to fight the rebellious American colonists. With the gold inside the chest was a tontine, an agreement that says all the gold belongs to the last surviving member of the regiment and his descendants. Of course, the Phaeton Club has made every effort to track down the descendants of every man in the regiment so that we can return the gold to its rightful owner. But that's not so easy to suss out. We need to find out which of the men in the regiment lived longer than all the others. I've rung up old Sneed at the... Oh, are we meeting him? Oh, I see. Alright, I haven't seen him in a while. at the British Library, and he said he'd start putting together some information about that time in history. He's a good guy. He also mentioned that the Imperial War Museum recently opened a traveling exhibit of Revolutionary War artifacts from America. You may want to pop by and have a look at that. Okay. The box is filled with gold coins. The coins are stamped George III. The Tontine Agreement is written on very thick yellow paper. It says, "We, the undersigned, the 5th Regiment, on this 25th day of January, 1781, do hereby agree that this goal shall be held in Tontine until but one of us has met our Maker." The names of 20 men are written out in a list with 20 signatures beneath it. Look at how fancy they used to write in those days, Starkazi. But see how the letter is covered in splotches of ink? Markers and ballpoint pens weren't invented in those days, so they had to write by dipping sharpened feathers, called quills, in ink. Yeah, that's right. It was messy. Yeah. Still kind of cool though. Oh, my throat is gonna hurt today. Let's go here. There, the Abbey. This would probably pronunciations. This would probably be a good place to find out when someone died, if they were really famous. Lots of famous people are buried here. But how will we find out about any of the Tontine's soldiers here? With her? Miss Mantlet, how are you? I'm not sure I remember you. I've been searching for any kind of record that my family might have kept over the years. One of the few precious heirlooms that my family has held for hundreds of years is the family Bible. It was kept in an old trunk in my grandfather's attic, until he lent it to the rector here at Westminster. The rector was doing a study on old Bible editions. I just borrowed it back. No one in our family has looked at it for generations, but when I opened up to the front page, I found that notes had been scribbled in it, like an old ledger. In the past, families often kept records like that in the family Bible. They noted down events that seemed important to them, like births, deaths, and what appeared to be important historical events. That way, the family had a kind of little history of its own. I couldn't make out all of it because the writing is so old it had faded away completely in places. I did manage to find the name Samuel Mantlet. The mention was a notation of his death, but frustratingly enough, their date was rubbed out. The only thing that might help to figure it out was a mention of an event that also happened that year. The death notice was written on the same line as the words, "Basil prison stormed by mob, Paris." Oh, we have to find out the year for that? Okay, gotcha. Probably their library, but I guess not yet. Oh, I heard the thunder. I think there's going to be a storm soon. I hope you don't hear it. Madame Tussauds may be just a tourist attraction, but it's been around for over 200 years. They're pretty careful to get all their history right. Let's see what Mr. Page came up with here. You? Okay. Oh, hello. You're Basil's nephew, Jake, correct? I wish I could tell you that I found the day that my ancestor John Page died, but I'm afraid it seems impossible to trace. Sadly, my family has not kept very good records on even our most recent lives, let alone the lives of our 200-year-old relatives. And there's nothing in the legal registries. But I did find one clue in a trunk of family heirlooms kept by my grandmother's grandmother. It's a marvelous treasure trove, full of knickknacks and interesting bits of history. I rooted through the whole thing and found this old medallion. I cleaned it off with a bit of silver polish and found an inscription on the back. Have a look. This? Mr. Page has found a medallion, which is like a medal or badge. The front is very tarnished with age. The back has been polished to a shine, so that you can read some words. It says, in memoriam, Lieutenant John Page perished at the Battle of Waterloo in the service of His Majesty King George III. Oh, okay. I don't think he's the last to leave then. Whoa, I hope you don't heard that thunder. This is such bad timing. Napoleon set for Madame Tussauds in 1799 so that she could create a wax figure in his likeness. Years later, Madame Tussauds also made a wax figure of his foe, the Duke of Wellington. It is said that after Napoleon's death, Wellington often visited Madame Tussauds so that he could stare at the figure of his old enemy. Okay. The guidebook says that Madame Tussauds herself was alive during the French Revolution. This wax model was made from a plaster cast called a death mask of Marie and why? How is it that I suddenly can't pronounce her name? Marie Antoinette's actual head. Madame Tussauds was there in Paris in 1793 when King Louis XVI. What is XVI? 10? 6? 16th? King Louis the 16th? Maybe? And Marie Antoinette were executed. She made imprints of the king's and queen's faces right after they'd been beheaded. What? Are you serious? By the guillotine. That's so gross. I agree, Jake. I agree. That lady must have had nerves of steel. No way would I ever do that. But since she did today, 200 years later, we know exactly what Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI looked like. Oh no. Oh. How? Why? She's mad. Okay. Let's go to furthest. Queen Street. Oh. Whoa. Me learning history. Doesn't it freak you out when you think that some of these buildings were built before our country was founded, Sakaze? England is so much older than America. Okay. Hi. Luckily for me, my family is very proud of its past. It's been a tradition to keep letters, diaries, and photographs of our ancestors and hand them down from parent to child so that they'll never be lost. Does your family have a famous background or something, Mr. Blanche? Not really, Jake, but just because your family isn't wealthy or famous doesn't mean that its history shouldn't be important to you. I loved reading the diary left us by one of my mother's ancestors in the mid-1800s. It didn't mention any famous poets or painters or Queen Victoria, but it was full of charming stories about her life and the lives of her children. More precious to me than any gold, I assure you. I searched through trunks and trunks of our family's oldest things till I found this box of letters that were written sometime after the Revolutionary War. This one was written by the wife of Thomas Blanche, the soldier who signed the Tontine. Okay. In the letter, she's very sad about her husband's death. Unfortunately, it's not dated. Oh my goodness. Why? Why? This is kind of hard to read, Sakade. Let me see if I can make it up. It says, My dear Rebecca, your letter brightened my day in this dark time. Since the death of my beloved husband this spring, I feel the year has grown bleak. The troubles in France are too distressing to think on. I feel sure that Thomas would have been amazed had he lived to see King Louis and Marie Antoinette lose their heads to the peasant mob. God forfend that such harm should come to our beloved King George. It goes on a little about sending her love to the family and stuff, then it's signed, Yours with God's blessings, Mrs. Thomas Blanche. Stakazi, this letter doesn't have a date on it, but it does tell us that Thomas Blanche died the same year that King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette of France were beheaded. I wonder what that means. We have to find out when Marie Antoinette's death is. He died before them. Oh. I hope there are people who died after that. It's gonna be difficult. Oh, it's the museum. Okay. I was not paying attention to where I was clicking. Hey, Mr. Sneed. Marcus Amesbury from the Phaeton Club had sent us over to do some research about events in the late 1700s. Do you have any idea where Stakazi and I should start? According to the excitable Mr. Amesbury, you two need to know a bit about what was going on here in Europe around the time of that colonial uprising you call the American Revolution. I noticed that the Imperial War Museum is having a special exhibit on that particular rebellion, so I trust you'll pop by there to study up. Okay. In the meantime, I've gone through our vast history section and put together some of the highlights of events on this side of the Atlantic. It was quite an exciting time in Europe's history, as you see. Oh, okay. He's not making any snide remarks. Napoleon Bonaparte, or something like that, was one of the greatest military geniuses of all time. After the French Revolution, he led the French armies to conquer the greater part of Western Europe, okay? In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of France. Can he do that? His lifetime goal was to follow in the footsteps of Alexander the Great and create a world empire, but the powerful forces of the British Empire stood in his way, okay? In 1805, the British Navy under the command of Admiral Horatio Nelson defeated the French at the Battle of Trafalgar. Napoleon was forced to abandon his dream of conquering Britain, okay? In the hopes of securing his empire to the east, Napoleon in 1812 unwisely chose to attack Russia. The brutal Russian winter and the pride of the Russian people who burned Moscow rather than let Napoleon conquer it made this campaign one of the worst disasters in military history. Shortly after, Napoleon was forced to give up his throne and face exile on the small island of Elba. Fierce to the end, Napoleon escaped Elba and returned to lead the French army once again. His final defeat came at the hands of the English general, the Duke of Wellington, at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Napoleon died in exile on the tiny island of St. Helena in 1821, so the Battle of Waterloo is 1815. Alright. Wow, what a wild life Napoleon had, general, emperor, then a prisoner on a scrawny little island. I wonder which English king ruled when Napoleon was Emperor of France. Let's check out our chart of kings. Check out your chart of monarchs to find out who ruled England in 1804. Say hi to my chart too. It's called Google. Give me one moment. Who ruled England in 1804? George III, the name which kept appearing. I'm silly. George III. That's right. King George III ruled England while Napoleon was Emperor of France. There sure was a lot of going on during George III's reign. Okay. A history book says that one of the most important events in Europe just after the War for Independence in America was the French Revolution. In the late 1700s, the people of France became very unhappy with their government. Wars and careless spending had created a huge national debt that kept the common people, they're going to talk about Marie Antoinette, of France in terrible poverty. The king and nobility, however, continued to live in extreme luxury despite the fact that hard-working commoners starved in the streets. King Louis XVI and his greedy wife Marie Antoinette spent huge sums of money on parties and clothes to entertain their court, to the anger and frustration of the poor people of Paris who could not even afford bread to eat. At last, on July 14th of 1789, the people rose up and stormed the royal prison of the Bastille. They released the king's prisoners and destroyed the building. The revolution that followed led to the public execution of King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette in 1793. The revolutionaries were determined to erase the corrupt upper classes and give equality to all French citizens. Unfortunately, the fury of people who had been mistreated for so long brought on a bloody period known as the Reign of Terror. In this time, dukes, princes, and indeed everyone suspected of being an enemy of the revolution was killed. Whoa, oh my. Thousands were executed by the guillotine, a device that beheaded its victims by sending a heavy iron blade crashing down on their necks. Finally, the disorder and corruption of the revolutionary government allowed Napoleon Bonaparte to come to power as dictator in 1799, ending the revolution. And I already forgot the years. 1799. So somebody died before 1799. Is that all I know? I can't remember the rest. Okay, the War Museum. Here's the Revolutionary War exhibit Mr. Amesbury told us about. How weird to think that England and America fought a big war once. I always think of the English as being on our side. Okay. The British Army of the late 1700s was one of the finest fighting forces of its time. The crack regiments fought in the traditional European style by lining up in rows, one row firing after another. In this way, the British forces kept up a solid line of fire that would have devastated any traditional foe. The American soldiers, however, did not always use the traditional style of fighting. Early on in the war, colonists found that guerrilla warfare was more effective. This style of fighting included hiding behind trees, fences, and houses to shoot at the British forces as they passed in their nice, neat lines. This weakened the effect of the British troops as there was no organized force for them to fire upon. The guerrilla tactics of the colonists, matched by their furious defense of their homes, helped to defeat the British troops and gain independence for the American people. Okay. The colonists living in America around the year 1770 decided that it was time to have their own government and not be ruled by a country and king across the sea. King George III, England's king at the time, had placed heavy taxes on the colonies without any kind of discussion or election on this side of the ocean. This was called taxation without representation. To protest a high tax on tea, a band of American colonists dumped a shipload of tea overboard in the Boston Harbor in 1773. The Boston Tea Party, as it came to be called, pushed the colony and its mother country closer to war. Okay. In 1775, the shot heard around the world was fired in Lexington, Vermont, between British and colonial troops. This skirmish began the War for Independence that ended in 1783 after the American troops defeated the British at Yorktown. The commander of the American forces, General George Washington, became the first American president in 1787. Okay, is that all? Okay, it looks like we have some calculations to do. Can I just look at this first? Okay, so either Robert Page. John Page died at the Battle of Waterloo, so we need to find that. Battle of Waterloo. Mob stormed the Bastille prison. This is Marie Antoinette. Died in the same year that Marie Antoinette. Hang on. And King Louis XVI were beheaded. Hang on. That a mob stormed the Basil prison in Paris. Am I confused? Okay, you know what? Let's just try. Okay. So, okay. The 3 Tontine signers who survived were John Page, Thomas Blanche, and Samuel Mantlet. Alright, John Page died at Battle of Waterloo. Can I have some years? Okay, Marie Antoinette, 1793. Can I find the latest years? Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of France in 1804 and 1805. Whoa. The Battle of Waterloo fought in 1815. Oh! Battle of Waterloo was quite late. 1815. Oh, okay. Napoleon Bonaparte's rise to power. Alright. It's Battle of Waterloo. Oh, the Battle of Waterloo. Okay, Battle of Waterloo is 1815. Who died in the Battle of Waterloo? Page, was it? Was it John Page? Alright, John Page died in the Battle of Waterloo. Okay, and the rest died in the same year as Marie Antoinette. Marie Antoinette died in 1793. Alright, what page?
You got it!
Mr. Page's family should receive the gold because John Page outlived all the other members of the Tontine. According to the Tontine, whichever signer lived longer than all the others should have inherited all the gold. Mr. Amesbury told us that the only members of the Tontine who survived the American Revolution were John Page, Samuel Mantlet, and Thomas Blanche. According to her family Bible, Miss Mantlet's ancestor, Samuel Mantlet, died in the same year that the people of Paris stormed the Bastille Prison, 1789. Mr. Blanche found a letter that said his ancestor Thomas Blanche died in the same year that King Louis XVI of France and Marie Antoinette were beheaded in 1793. But Mr. Page's ancestor, John Page, died at the Battle of Waterloo. That battle wasn't until 1815, so he outlived all the other members. The gold goes to Mr. Page's family. Alright, he doesn't look like he needs the money though. Looks pretty rich. A fortune in 200-year-old gold was delivered at last to its destined heir, thanks to Sakaze Gamer of the Eagle Eye Detective Agency. Sakaze tracked down the longest surviving member of a regiment of... Hang on. It rained the day we thought until night. Oh, that's terrible handwriting. The weather, so we stopped at a cafe and... Okay. English troops, explained Marcus Amesbury. She used what she learned about the American and French revolutions to figure out which soldier outlived the rest. The gold's recipient, Robert Page, stated, "My family and I plan to donate some of the gold towards research on conquering cancer." That's nice. That's nice. That's the kind of war we'd like to fight. Well, so it seems we've ended this mystery, and so in the next episode we will cover at last Case of the Professor's Pen Pal, which I thought was pretty difficult. So until next time, thank you for watching and goodbye.